Maxey from outside. Sixers lead, courtesy of Tyrese Maxey.
Hit deep to left field. Going back is Locastro. It is gone!
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Beef Up Front podcast here on Pick Swap Media. As we continue our extended March Madness coverage, we gave you deep breakdowns on the East region, the South region, the West region, the Midwest region. Now, this is one of my favorite episodes that I like to do, a little solo episode, 20 players to watch in March Madness. And you're not going to have your headliners like Cooper Flagg, Mark Sears, Janai Broom, Braden Smith, all Americans, the high-profile type of names. But these are guys that are either, high-level players on teams that don't get as much shine kind of in the media, glue guys on some of these key teams, some teams I think could make some upsets, and then even a list of kind of some breakout guys, some guys that I think could have a Jack Golke, Andrew Funk type performance and really kind of take the nation by storm for one night and have a night to remember for the rest of their career and give people another great March Madness memory. So I choose 20 because I do 5 from each of the 4 regions. So we'll go South, we'll go to the West, we'll go to the East, and then the Midwest, giving you 5 players out of each region. And just touching a little bit on these guys and giving you a little bit more kind of background knowledge as we head into the first 2 days of the NCAA tournament. And these guys are going to be front and center on center stage and looking to make a name for themselves. So we'll start in the South region. We go to Donovan Dent from New Mexico. They are the 10 seed there. This is the top left portion of your bracket. Simply put, Donovan Dent, bucket getter, 1,365 career points in 3 seasons, shoots at 41.5% from three-point range this year, averaged 20.6 points per game, which was 8th in the country, and 6.4 assists per game, which was 12th. So not just a bucket getter, but a distributor as well for a New Mexico team that I think their matchup against Marquette is going to be one of the funner matchups of the entire first round of the NCAA tournament. He had 8 games this season of 25 or more points, and when he scored 20 or more, New Mexico was 15-3. So I think he's going to have a big game against Marquette. He's going to be going kind of bucket for bucket, I think, at one point with Cam Jones. It might come down to kind of who's making their shots in the last minute or so between those two guys. He's going to have a tough matchup with Stevie Mitchell, an all Big East defensive team guard, a guy that's going to probably get up in his face 94 feet. But Donovan Dent's a really fun player and a player that if he goes nuclear, we could see an upset there with number 10 New Mexico over number 7 Marquette. Second player I want to touch on out of the South region, Danny Wolf. Forward, center, guard, kind of a jack-of-all-trades type of player for Michigan, who is the 5 seed. Jack-of-all-trades player as a 7-footer. You don't really see that much often, but he initiates offense for the Wolverines at times. He runs pick and rolls as the primary ball handler with Vlad Golden. They have 2 7-footers out there. Michigan does at sometimes. And it's going to be an interesting matchup. Michigan's main problem this season, turning the basketball over. They're playing a UC San Diego team that forces some of the most turnovers out of any defense in the entire country. So Danny Wolf's going to have to play really well. That's only a 2.5-point spread. As a 5-12, Michigan only a 2.5-point favorite there. Goes to show you that Vegas has a lot of respect for this UC San Diego team, and it might be a bad matchup. But Danny Wolf's a very unique player, fun player, was in this tournament last year, upset Auburn in a 4-13 matchup as a member of Yale. So averaged 13.1 points per game this year, 9.8 rebounds, and 3.7 assists per game. 15 double-doubles this year, and he had 18 games with 4 or more assists. That's as a 7-footer. So a really impressive player. And if you're just a respectable, just ball watcher, just a guy that enjoys watching good kind of fundamental basketball, Danny Wolf's a really fun watch for all he can do as a 7-foot player. It's an interesting kind of sight to see if it's going to be your first time watching him. Third player out of the South, Tre Holloman. We're sticking in the state of Michigan. He is a Michigan State guard. They are the 2 seed. Plain and simple, a dog. I said it kind of at the beginning. Some of these guys are going to be high-profile scorers like a Donovan Dent. Maybe a guy like Danny Wolf, who not a big-time scorer, but just a really good player, might not get as much national shine as some of these other guys. A guy like Tre Holloman plays on a really good team in Michigan State. But he's not going to be a stat sheet stuffer. He's not going to be the guy going out there getting 25, 30 points. But he's just a glue guy. And if Michigan State is a team that makes a run, Tre Holloman's going to be, I think, kind of leading the charge for that Michigan State team alongside Jace Richardson there. Looks exactly like Cassius Winston. Got the headband on, got the number 5 on. So if you're turning on the NCAA tournament and you're watching Michigan State for the first time this year, no, that is not Cassius Winston out there, but it is very funny how eerily similar those two look. He sets the tone for this team, in your face, on ball defense, and I said not going to pop off on the stat sheet. He might have like 8 points, 3 assists, 3 rebounds, but he's going to get a couple steals. He'll probably take a charge. He'll dive for some loose balls. You're just going to get fired up watching him, and especially if you're betting on Michigan State, he's a guy that you kind of want on your side, a very glue guy type of player. Fourth player from this region, Stephen Ashworth, Creighton, 9 seed. I think him and Danny Wolf are probably the two most high-profile names. We've seen Stephen Ashworth in the tournament now for a few years. We are very familiar with him, and his performance last year against Oregon was a pretty awesome one. Can he make some noise in what is his last tournament? A transfer from Utah State in the past, played at Creighton in the tournament, as we know, last year. A big-time shot maker, has deep range, but he's just like kind of a little white guy. He doesn't really look like much of a threat out there, and he's one of the best players in the Big East. As I said, can he make some noise in his last tournament? Averaged 16.3 points per game this year and 6.8 assists per game this year, which was 8th in the country. Shoots 92.7% from the free throw line. I was very shocked to see that is not the number one mark in the entire country. That's 5th best in the country, but he's a very reliable free throw shooter. So Creighton versus Louisville, that's the first game of the tournament on Thursday. Could very well come down to free throws at the end. Ashworth is a guy you want on your side if you're betting on Creighton. Has 23 games this year with 3 or more threes. In Creighton this season, 18-5 when he does hit 3 or more threes. So when he's shooting the basketball well, this is a very dangerous Creighton team, and one that I think has a legit chance to upset Oregon to upset Auburn due to the matchup with Janai Broome and Ryan Kalkbrenner. I think that could be a kind of an equalizer there, and they're going to need a guy like Ashworth to step up in that regard. So can Stephen Ashworth make a run to the second weekend in his last NCAA tournament? Gonna be interesting to watch and find out. And last player we'll touch on out of the South region, Nick Towson out of Yale, a 6'7" wing that averaged 15.4 points, 7.2 rebounds, and 3.6 assists per game. Another jack-of-all-trades type of player, very similar to Danny Wolf, just kind of a little smaller. And he was on this Yale team as well last year. 7 double-doubles on the season. He's going to need to be a key player on the glass in this matchup against Texas A&M. Yale, the 13, versus Texas A&M, the 4. Texas A&M, the best offensive rebounding team in the country. Yale, the 18th best defensive rebounding team in the country. Nick Towson's going to be relied on heavily to grab rebounds, and 7 double-doubles on the season. If he's pulling down a double-double, Yale's going to have a very good chance to win this game. So another fundamental player that is a jack-of-all-trades type of guy that can shoot the basketball, that can rebound the basketball, distribute the basketball, does just a little bit of everything. So my 5 players to know for out of the South region: Donovan Dent for New Mexico, Danny Wolf for Michigan, Tre Holloman for Michigan State, Stephen Ashworth for Creighton, and Nick Towson out of Yale. All right, we move down to the West now, which is the bottom left portion of your bracket. This is my favorite player in the NCAA tournament. I'm going out there and saying that now. Jeremiah Fears, freshman point guard out of Oklahoma. They are the 9 seed in the West. Has been on an awesome tear over the past month, kind of willing this Oklahoma team to the tournament. They were in bubble land for a lot of the past month, and he had some really big games to help propel this team into the NCAA tournament. Over his last 8 games, Jeremiah Fears is averaging 22.6 points per game, 4 games of 27 or more points. He might be the most kind of high-profile NBA pick out of this list of players. He's projected to go in the lottery right now. But when you watch him out there, he looks like he's 15, 16 years old. He's a guy that's still only supposed to be a senior in high school. He's a $150 maybe on a good day, but he's a baller. He's not afraid of anything. You're going to see him in ball screen after ball screen, and he's just a guy that's going to go to work. Very interesting matchup with UConn. Interested to see how they defend him. UConn's defense has been up and down this year, but I expect Hassan Diarra to kind of draw that assignment. If Aiden Mahaney's on him, I think Jeremiah Fears could have a big day, but I expect Hassan Diarra to be the matchup there, and that's a fun, really good defensive guard versus a really good offensive guard to watch. We go to the second player in the West region, a guy that was on this list last year, and I'm bringing him back this year. Tyon Grant Foster out of Grand Canyon, the 13 seed. The Antelopes, they will be playing the number 4 seed, the Maryland Terrapins. Last year, he was one of the stories of the tournament. Hasn't been talked about this much coming into this year, but had a heart condition. Was basically, I think, sorry if this is wrong or medically misspeaking, but I believe he was almost pronounced dead at one point, like had a heart attack while playing, was able to be revived. This was when he was at Kansas, transferred from Kansas to Grand Canyon, is able to get cleared, and now back-to-back years in the NCAA tournament is an awesome story. Took a step back a bit in production this year, but still a really productive player. Was the WAC player of the year before. But he's a guy that was here last year and has a chance to make some noise. I think Grand Canyon is a live dog this weekend against Maryland as well. 14.5 points per game, 6 rebounds per game. And as I said, was the guy on a team last year that won a tournament game. I like them to upset the Terps. I think Tyon Grant Foster would have to have a big day in the meantime if that's going to happen. Third guy out of the West, Bennett Sturtz out of Drake, the 11 seed, the go-to guard, the point guard for this Drake team. Great story with Bennett Sturtz as well. A Division II transfer with head coach Ben McCollum, who came up from the D2 ranks. He brought a couple D2 guys with him. Bennett Sturtz was one of the best mid-major players in the entire country this year. Heck, not even mid-major, just one of the best players in the country. Do that jumping from Division II to Division I. That's just an awesome story, an awesome accomplishment. Now he gets to go play, though, from Drake. He gets to go play a Missouri team that is one of the more athletic teams in the entire country. Can he withstand the pressure? Can he withstand the athleticism? That remains to be seen. But I saw a video on Instagram today. Like, he's getting some legit NBA buzz. Just the ability that he showed while taking this leap, his calmness, his composure. Drake plays at the slowest pace in the entire country. So this guy doesn't let anyone speed him up. We'll see what Mizzou does with this, but he averages 19.1 points per game, which is 41st in the country, 5.7 assists, which is 28, and he has 18 games this year of 20 or more points. He makes his team go. That's an interesting 6-11 matchup between Drake and Missouri. Bennett Sturtz is certainly a guy to watch if Drake's going to be the team to pull off one of those 11-6 upsets. We go back up to a matchup that we already talked about with UConn and Oklahoma, and we go to the UConn side for freshman Liam McNeeley out of UConn, obviously the 8 seed there. Liam McNeeley, Jeremiah Fears, 2 of the top freshmen in the entire country. Going to be awesome to see these guys go head-to-head as well. But Liam McNeeley, alpha energy. He reminds me a lot of Cam Spencer, personality-wise, from that UConn team, kind of the energy when he's hitting shots, when he's making defensive plays. That's what gets the team going. That's what gets the team kind of fired up. But he's got more skill than him, and he's probably going to be a lottery pick this year as well. UConn is 9-2 when he scores 15 or more points. Missed some time in the middle of the season, but he has to be the guy if UConn's going to make a run. If they're going to beat Oklahoma, and then if they're going to upset most likely Florida in the next round, Liam McNeeley has to step up and kind of take his game to another level. Had 38 points earlier in the year. I believe that was against Creighton, but a lot of pressure on this freshman, but he's kind of built for it, and I think he's a player that can make some noise. And to round out the West region, another freshman, 3 freshmen, I believe we have with McNeeley, Jeremiah Fears, and then wrapping it up here with Billy Richmond out of Arkansas, who is the 10 seed. He's really came on as of late. Another player that if you're just looking at box scores, you're not really seeing that much, throughout the body of work of the season. But over the last kind of 5-6 games, he's really came on, and you're seeing kind of that 4-star, 5-star talent that he was recruited. He was a guy that was recruited to Kentucky, originally committed there with Cal, follows him to Arkansas, but has really came on as of late. Was a 4-star recruit at 24/7 Sports, hyper athletic, 6'5" wing, a high flyer. Won't be a surprise if he has a poster dunk, a transition, kind of crazy athletic play. Only averaged 5.6 points per game this season, but over his last 5 games, averaging 10.2 points per game. He's had an expanded role. They're a team that's been dealing with some injuries throughout the later portion of the season, and Billy Richmond has made the most of his opportunities. Hit his first 2 3-pointers of the season in the last 2 games too. So a guy that's building some confidence. If Arkansas is going to beat Kansas, and if Arkansas has a chance to beat the Johnnies, Billy Richmond is a guy to watch and to know. He's an X factor in that matchup there, at least in round 1 versus Kansas. All right, to wrap up the West region, to recap it real quick, Jeremiah Fears out of Oklahoma, Tyon Grant Foster out of Grand Canyon, Bennett Sturtz out of Drake, Liam McNeeley out of UConn, and Billy Richmond out of Arkansas. Are we going up now to the upper right portion of your bracket in the East region? We'll start off with another freshman, Robert Wright III out of Baylor, who is the 9 seed. Freshman guard out of the Philadelphia area, had some big-time games this year. Jeremy Roach missed a lot of time with concussion, and Robert Wright was kind of forced to grow up and be the point guard for that Baylor team. Jeremy Roach back there, I think these guys play well off of each other. He averaged 11.3 points per game this year, 4.3 assists per game as a freshman in the Big 12. That's very hard to do. Had 11 games with 15 or more points this year, and he's a player that, he's got got stones. He's got balls to put it quite frankly, to say the least. He's not afraid to take the last shot. I think that's going to be a really close back and forth game between Baylor and Mississippi State. And I could see Robert Wright being the guy to make kind of the play down the stretch, him going against Josh Hubbard. I think this is a very promising guard. I hope he comes back to Baylor for another year, because I think he could be one of the best guards in the Big 12 as soon as next season. All right, we go to the 5 seed, the Oregon Ducks. Another guy, I was talking about Jeremiah Fears, probably my favorite player in this entire bracket, or in this 20 players to watch. Jackson Shellstad out of Oregon is probably my second favorite player in this NCAA tournament. He's a Mr. March type of player. Really fallen in love watching him over the last month or so. A tough shot maker, great range, only averaged 13.2 points per game, so not eye-popping, but he can be a guy that goes off for 25 or 30 on a good night for sure. Oregon too, as he goes, they go 13-5 when he scores 15 or more this year. He's the key to Oregon making some noise in the tournament. Dana Altman's a great coach. He's won at least one game in every NCAA tournament that he's coached at Oregon. I think that they're going to get past Liberty. How much farther do they make it? It's going to come down to Jackson Shellstad. He had a bad game against Michigan State. They bow out early. If he has a big game in this one, I could certainly see them making some noise. Off the top of my head, I forget who the 4 seed is in that region with them, or it's Arizona. So, and I have Arizona losing to Akron. So I definitely could see Oregon being a Sweet 16 team. And that's on the back of Jackson Shellstad, though. It's going to come down to him and making shots. All right, a guy that's probably the most under the radar player, or least known name, I would say, out of the players on this list, Nate Johnson, guard out of Akron, the 13 seed in this region. They will be facing off against Arizona. Akron's a really fun team, though. I have them winning this game. I have that as an outright upset there. And I like the over a lot in this game. I think it's going to be a really exciting one. And I like it because of Nate Johnson. He's the engine that makes Akron go. Akron, 24 out of 34 games this year, 80 or more points. That's sixth in the country at 84.6 points per game. Sixth in assists per game, too, at 18.1. Akron also sixth in pace. So this is a team that runs up and down. It's going to, like, when you're watching them against Arizona, it's going to be like a tennis match, just kind of following the ball back and forth, twisting your head and maybe straightening your neck a little. That's how fast these guys are going to be going. But Nate Johnson's the guy there. Expect him to make some big plays if Akron's going to be the team to upset Arizona. All right, we go to back-to-back shooters now. These are going to be 2 shooters that I think have Andrew Funk, Jack Golke type of days, or capability, at least in this tournament, to have a 6-7 3-pointer type of night and carry their teams to a round 1 victory. The first one, Richie Saunders out of BYU, 6'5", 6'6", wing, guard, whatever you want to call him there. But he may be the best pure shooter in this entire tournament. That's Richie Saunders. Every time he goes up with it looks good. Just the purest form. It's just you're shocked if he shoots the ball and he doesn't make it, I think, from 3-point range. Every time he lets it fire, it looks like it's going in. Richie Saunders averaged 16 points per game and shot 43.3% from 3 this season, had 13 games with at least 3 threes, can get hot in a hurry, quite frankly. That's a very interesting matchup against VCU, a very good defensive team. They're going to be all over Saunders, I assume, chasing him on every screen. But Kevin Young and BYU is going to find creative ways to get the ball into Saunders' hands. And if he gets any ounce of daylight to rip a shot, he's going to do it, and he's most likely going to knock it down. And the last one, another guy that I think has the potential to go nuclear and have a 6-7 3-point type of day, and it's against a really good defense too in St. Mary's. That's Tyler Nickel out of Vandy. They are a 10 seed in that South region as well. Very similar to Saunders. He's got Golke vibes. He's got Andrew Funk vibes. Guys that's just going to let it rip whenever, wherever, and he could just have that kind of March Madness crazy type of day. And it's just like you're getting alerts on your phone. Tyler Nickel has hit his 6-3 of the first half. That's not going to be a surprising stat to pop up for me. Averaged 10.5 points per game, shot 40.6% from 3. Vandy went 14-4 this season when he scored in double figures. So another player, where he's knocking down his 3-pointers. That's when that team's kind of flourishing and at their best, playing a really good St. Mary's defense. That's going to be a tough one to come by. But Tyler Nickel, a knockdown shooter, interested to see how he does against that St. Mary's defense. All right, to wrap up the East, Robert Wright out of Baylor, Jackson Shellstad out of Oregon. A lot of guards in this one. Nate Johnson out of Akron, Richie Saunders out of BYU, and Tyler Nickel out of Vandy. And to finish us off, we go to the Midwest region in the bottom right portion of the bracket. We start with High Point, the 13 seed, another team that I like to pull off the outright upset. I have them beating Purdue. Keza Giffa, the point guard for this High Point team. High Point had the 7th best field goal percentage in college basketball this year. They're playing a Purdue defense that has been giving up 75 points left and right down the stretch. Giffa is the engine that makes this team go. Very efficient team. He's the guy that gets them into their sets, takes these efficient shots, averaged 14.8 points per game this year, 16.6 points per game over the last month with multiple 20-plus outings. So the guy that was obviously playing in a smaller conference in the Big South, they were playing must-win basketball over the last month, obviously having to win their conference tournament. He's used to taking the big shots, having these big type of moments. Keza Giffa is a guy certainly to watch out for, especially if that Purdue High Point game gets close down the stretch. He's going to have the ball in his hands quite a lot. All right, we talked about Jeremiah Fears, Jackson Shellstad. This guy probably slots in at number 3 for my favorite players to watch in this tournament. Otega Oweh out of Kentucky, the 3 seed, has really emerged as an alpha for this Kentucky team. When Kentucky brought in all these transfers, my big takeaway with them was it's going to be a really good team, like a really sound, fundamental team, play well together. But do they have an alpha? Do they have a dog? And I think over the last month, a dog and an alpha has emerged for that Kentucky team, and why I think that they might be a little bit more dangerous than some people are anticipating in this NCAA tournament. Oweh averages 16.2 points per game, but he scored 20 or more in 6 of his last 9 games. Had a buzzer beater basically a buzzer beater against Oklahoma in the SEC tournament. Took over in the regular season game down the stretch within the last few weeks against Oklahoma as well, his former school. So he's a guy that wants the ball in those big moments, and he's a 6'4", 6'5" wing, can get up, can make threes when he's open. Not the best 3-point shooter, but more of a guy just dynamic off the bounce, taking it to the hoop. A very fun player to watch score the basketball. Third player out of this region, Utah State, number 10 seed, Mason Falzev, very well-rounded player, very similar to kind of Nate Towson that we were talking about out of Yale. Does a little bit of everything for his team, and is certainly a big reason why his team is here in the spot, and why I think Utah State's actually going to upset UCLA. 14.9 points per game on the year, 6.2 rebounds, 3.7 assists, shot 40% from 3 as well. Also a high-energy guy that's just, you're going to see a bunch of videos, I think, of him like, all right, he's hit his 3rd 3. Mick Cronin's over on the sideline calling a timeout, and you see Falzev running off the court, flexing. Like, he is a guy that is going to bring the energy, bring the juice, and I think people are really going to enjoy watching. 2 players left to break down on our top 20 to watch to know for March Madness. Quadir Copeland out of McNeese, the 12 seed, a Syracuse transfer, a Philadelphia, New Jersey area type kid. So he brings that kind of Philly, South Jersey kind of toughness to him to the table for McNeese. Another jack of all trades type of player. I said at the beginning, we're going to give you some high profile scorers. We're going to give you a few players that do everything. We're going to give you some glue guys. I think Quadir Copeland kind of fits into that jack of trades, glue guy type thing. And then we're going to give you a few potential breakout names as well. And Quadir Copeland fits into that glue guy, but also jack of all trades type of player. Provides great defensive pressure for a McNeese team that forces 9 turnovers per game, or averages 9 steals per game. A 6'6" guard that could really disrupt Clemson, I think, and cause some issues for Chase Hunter. Potentially, Chase Hunter is a really good guard, but a smaller guard, you put a 6'6" long guard on him and guard him 94 feet, bring a lot of pressure to him. That could disrupt that Clemson team a little bit. Only averaged 9 points per game, but 3.3 rebounds per game, 4.5 assists per game. Just does a little bit of everything and really makes his presence felt on the defensive end. And I think that's another potential upset there with McNeese over Clemson. And to wrap up the Midwest region and our final player on our list of 20, Blue Kane out of Georgia, 9 seed. I saw Mark Henry Jr. tweet about this guy early today as well. He was on my list to begin with, but he fits into that Tyler Nickel, another guy to the SEC kind of category of when he gets hot, he is a very dangerous shooter, and he could hit 4, 5, 6 threes and make that Georgia versus Gonzaga game very interesting. Another sniper. If he has a big day, like I said, expect Georgia to pull off the upset. Averaged 9.6 points per game, but has had quite a few big outings. And I think when Georgia was playing really well in spurts this year, Blue Kane was playing really well in his own regard. Play can be up and down, but when he is on, Georgia is tough to stop. So Blue Kane, Tyler Nickel, who are the other guys? Richie Saunders. Those are kind of 3 shooters, all white guys in their own respect, but 3 shooters that can really get hot in a hurry and make a name for themselves. So To wrap up the Midwest, Kezigifa out of High Point, Otega Owe out of Kentucky, Mason Falsev out of Utah State, Quadir Copeland out of McNeese, and Blue Kane out of Georgia. 20 players to know for this March Madness tournament. I'm expecting all those guys to at least have a big first round and hopefully advance into the second weekend as well. But as always, thank you everyone for tuning in to our extended March Madness coverage. We will have one more episode coming out where I break down my 10 favorite first round matchups coming out tomorrow night as well. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, and we'll talk next time.